Hi class, welcome to lesson 9.4, which is all about solving quadratic equations by completing the square. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to complete the square to write perfect square trinomials, and you should be able to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So let's talk about what does completing the square even mean. So in order to complete the square, that is, remember from last chapter, or the last couple chapters, we've talked about things that look like this. That's a perfect square, right? And if you were to multiply that out, you would end up with x squared plus 14x plus 49. And if I had given you this, I would have asked and expected you to rewrite it as this, okay? So all the same thing, that's what we're working with today. So in order to complete the square, that means we don't already have a perfect square. And we're going to manipulate it in order to make it so you have a perfect square. So the first step is to find 1/2 of b. So it's when I give you an x squared plus bx in order to complete the square. You're going to find 1/2 of that b value. And then you're going to square that number and add that to your x squared plus bx. So let's look at what does that even look like. So if I give you an r squared minus 8r plus c, and I want to know what value of c makes that expression a perfect square, what you do, your first step, find 1/2 of your b value. So in this instance, we have negative 8 is our b value, and 1/2 of it, or so you can either divide by 2, or you can say negative 8 times 1/2. Either way, you end up at a negative 4. So then, my second step is to square the value from step 1. Okay, so my value from step 1 was negative 4. So I take my negative 4 and I square it, and I end up at a 16. So then I rewrite it and I say that I have r squared minus 8r. So what I started with, but then I'm going to say if I add a 16 on there, now I can rewrite it as r minus 4 times r minus 4, or r minus 4 squared. And if I were to FOIL that out again, r times r gives me that r squared. My outer terms give me a minus 4r. Inner terms, minus 4r. Last terms give me a plus 16. So I have r squared minus 8r plus 16. Since I got back to what I had started with, I know my answer of r minus 4 times r minus 4, or r minus 4 squared, is correct. I, for some reason, can't, oh, there we go, erase those 2 dots. So that's what I would look for, okay? That's what I'm asking. I'm asking, actually, in this case, it asks what value of c makes it a perfect square, so you'd say 16, okay? Now, let's jump forward and have you try one on your own. Hopefully you said 49 would be the number you'd have to add in order to make it a perfect square. If you have questions about that, please be sure to ask for some help. Alright, example 2. Solve by completing the square. So example 1, we didn't have an equal sign, we just had the expression. But now we have an equal sign. So it's pretty much the same thing, but just a little bit different. So your first step is going to be get it into x squared minus bx form. Right now we have this plus 3 here. I don't want that plus 3 on the same side with my variable. So I'm going to say x squared minus 12x equals, if I subtract 3 from both sides, I have 5. My next step is going to be take half of my b term. So 1/2 times my negative 12, which is my negative 6. My third step of squaring that value. My fourth step is then going to be take that x squared minus 12x plus 36 equals, we already had that 5. So we had already said that x squared minus 12x equals 5. I'm changing it just a little bit. I'm adding 36 to both sides. If I add the same amount to both sides, it's an okay thing to do in the world of math, okay? You're changing it by the same amount on both sides, okay? So I add 36 to both sides, not just one side, but both sides. A lot of you are going to forget to add it to both sides. So I'm going to keep repeating that a few times. Add to both sides, add to both sides, add to both sides, okay? So then, if I were to rewrite it, I could say x minus 6 squared can be another way to write the left-hand side of the equation. And then 5 plus 36 gives me that 41. In order to solve that, I can take the square root of both of those, because remember we learned about how squares and square roots cancel each other out. So now we have x minus 6 equals the square root of 41, plus or minus the square root of 41, because it could be a positive or a negative. Then we have, let's see, in order to solve for x, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So I have x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 41. My last step is going to be saying x equals 6 plus the square root of 41, or x equals 6 minus the square root of 41. And if I do both of those, I end up with a 12.4 and a negative 0.4 as my answers. Okay? So this is a slightly faster way than yesterday of solving, but instead of having to guess and check with the table and rounding and estimating, you no longer are doing that. You're just, using math to solve each one instead of just trying to guess. All right? So I recommend, if you did not write down all of those steps as clearly as I did, maybe do that, because that's a lot of steps to get confused on, and it's good to have a nice example in your notes so you can look back and say, how did I do that? Oh yeah, that's right, okay? Why don't you go ahead and solve this one? Hopefully you ended up with -2 and +10. If you have questions, please be sure to reach out for some help. All right, now we're going to solve again by completing the square. And we have a -2x squared plus 36x minus 10 equals 24. Your very first step, just like back in chapter 7 and 8, you look, do they have anything in common? I look and I see a lot of even numbers here. So I'm actually going to divide everything by 2. Actually, I'm going to divide everything by a -2, so that way I have a positive x squared, okay? So if I divide -2x squared divided by -2, I have a positive x squared. And then divided by -2, that gives me minus 18x. -10 divided by -2 gives me a positive 5. 24 divided by a -2 gives me a -12. Okay? Then my next step is going to be get it into the x squared minus bx form. So I have x squared minus 18x. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have x squared minus 18x equals -17. My third step is going to be taking half of the b value. So that's a -9. My fourth step is then to square that value. So I have negative 9 squared, so 81. After I've squared that, I rewrite it using that perfect square. So I have x squared minus 18x plus 81 equals negative 17 plus 81. So now I can rewrite my x squared minus 18x plus 81 as x minus 9 squared equals negative 17 plus 81 is 64. After that, I can take the square root of both sides. So I'm left with x minus 9 equals plus or minus the square root of 64, which is 8. So instead of writing the square root of 64, I'm going to put 8. And then I have to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So I have 9 plus or minus 8. And when I do that, I have x equals 9 plus 8, or 17, and x equals 9 minus 8, or 1. So my answers are x equals 17, or x equals 1. Again, if you don't have those steps written out, I recommend go back, rewrite these. So these are good examples for you to study from. All right, go ahead and solve this one on your own. Hopefully you ended up with a -1, -7. If you have questions about those, please be sure to reach out for some help. All right, our last example, we were talking about canoeing. Suppose the rate of flow of an 80-foot wide river is given by the equation r equals negative 0.01x squared plus 0.8x, where r is the rate in miles per hour and x is the distance from the shore in feet. Joaquim does not want to paddle his canoe against a current that is faster than 5 miles per hour. At what distance from the riverbank must he paddle in order to avoid a current of 5 miles per hour? Okay, so we have an equation that negative 0.01x squared plus 0.8x. And we know he doesn't want to paddle in something that's 5 miles per hour or greater. R represents the rate in miles per hour, so I'm going to say it equals 5. So instead of putting R equals the equation, I'm going to say 5 equals. Okay? Now, I want to get my x squared by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by that negative 0.01 just to make my calculations a little bit easier, / our perfect squares don't have numbers with them. So if I do that, I have x squared minus 80x equals negative 500. From there, if I keep going, if I do 1/2 times negative 80, I get negative 40. So then my equation looks something like this, where I have x squared minus 80x plus negative 40 squared is 1600 equals negative 500 plus 1600. So this becomes x minus 40 squared equals 1100. If I take the square root, I have x minus 40 equals plus or minus the square root of 1100. And if I add 40 to both sides, I have x equals 40 plus or minus the square root of 1100. And if I do 40 plus the square root of 1100, I get 73 feet. And if I do 40 minus the square root of 1100, I get about 7 feet. So if I plug these in to the original problem, we're talking about 73 feet or 7 feet. We're talking about a river, okay? So we have our water, and if he stays within that 7 feet, or it says 73 feet, that would mean there's also 7 feet over here. You think about it, because we're talking about from this one, like pick a side of the shore, and he can either be 7 feet out or he could be 73, which then he's only 7 feet away from the other side of the river, because we know the river's 80 feet wide. So we know this whole thing's 80. So we know he needs to stay within 7 feet. All right, go ahead and solve this one on your own. Hopefully you ended up with 10 feet. If you have any questions, please be sure to reach out for some help. I'm more than happy to help you. I hope you guys have a fantastic day.